watching Veracity Hill. Here is your host, Dr. J.
Well, a good day to you, and thanks for joining us here for another episode of Veracity Hill, where we are striving for truth on a problem for Dr. Bart Ehrman. That's the title of today's episode, A Problem for Bart Ehrman. I'll be exploring what I have discovered is maybe an inconsistency. And so in many ways, this episode is sort of an open letter to Bart. I had the opportunity to meet him about 6 years ago before COVID, and we've had a nice relationship. I did this a couple years later. He generously shared this video series that I made defending him from the attacks of other Christian apologists. Very strange to have a generally conservative evangelical defending Bart Ehrman. That was odd. I got some flack for that. But it was in the interest of pursuing truth, striving for truth, and it's really important for Christian apologists to accurately understand their opponents. And so that was why I came to Bart's defense. In this episode, I want to pose a quandary, a problem for his consideration. And I suspect I know the way that he would go around it. And I wonder if that might lead to the types of arguments that are presented in the public arena against, from his perspective, against gospel reliability. Maybe it'll change the type of arguments that he presents. Now, 2 weeks ago, I responded to an interview he did with Myth Vision on the top three, what he believes are the top three contradictions in the New Testament. I think they were all in the Gospels, I think, if I remember correctly. And the third and final one was about the staff, no staff situation. And we will delve into that particular case thoroughly today, because over the last couple weeks, I had more time to reflect on his answer there, and I caught something, a slip-up, if you will. And I wanted to use this as sort of a thought experiment for our consideration. Now, before we jump into that, I just have a couple announcements. So in 2 Fridays from today, August 29th, I will be participating in a debate. It will be an in-person formal debate, not one of these internet cheap quality things. This is a real debate from people who are studied, academic. You know, the internet is full of people, anybody who can put together a debate these days and have 2-3 people live stream together through various software programs. Well, this is a formal debate, and it's a serious one. It's on Romans 9. So if you are a Christian and you are wondering what you should believe about divine election, I'll be debating a friend of mine. He's got a YouTube channel called Anglican Aesthetics. He will be taking the traditional Protestant view that Romans 9 is about individual election. I'll be taking a different view, which is less common, but gaining in popularity and respect among scholars, called the corporate election model. So I think that Ephesians 1 and Romans 9 are about corporate election. So I'll be presenting my arguments as to why I think it's about corporate election. And then there will maybe be an opportunity to talk about the implications for that, and cross-X should be a lot of fun. But hey, look, if you live in Chicagoland and you want to come to an in-person debate, go to veracityhill.com/events to learn more about this in-person debate here at the office of Defenders Media in West Chicago, the town. We're about an hour west of the city. And the event will also be live streamed for those that are unable to make it. But for more information, including to register for the in-person, it's $5, guys. Just $5. Cookies and drinks will be served, and the Q&A, the people that come in person will have the first opportunity for Q&A before we attend to any live stream questions if we have time. All right, I also want to mention a men's golf retreat for Veracity Hill in mid-September, September 19 to 21. If you like to golf, if you want to spend time with other men, if you want to chat theology and apologetics, spend some time with me, pick my brain on some things, I'd also love to learn about you. And if you are a fan of Veracity Hill, please come and join us for a fun weekend of golf, discussion, good food, beautiful autumn weather up there in the Northwoods of Wisconsin. It's about a 5-hour drive, so it'll be some drive time, but it's really beautiful up there, especially around that time of year when the autumn colors are beginning to come into full bloom, if not yet already there. I was just up in the Northwoods last week, and I already saw one tree that had already started changing colors. I don't know the science of all that precisely. Is it sun? Is it temperature related? I forget, but I think my wife knows. At any rate, so if you want to sign up for the retreat, go to veracityhill.com/events. Yes, you've got it nice and easy there to remember those URL structures. Okay, one final announcement. The Board of Directors of Defenders Media has generously offered a $10,000 challenge match. And so if you like what you see here with Veracity Hill and the other ministries associated with Defenders Media, and you want to support the work that we're doing here, please consider making a contribution at this time. Let me give you just one little, very small cost that's on my radar, but nevertheless, it's a cost, and would love to have a new partner to cover that. I learned from Gabe, our technical producer here for the program, if we wanted to simul-stream to the Veracity Hill Twitter/X account, we would have to sign up to get the blue check mark. Okay, well, we all remember sort of on the internet when this happened, hey, it's $8. There's probably like even now Premier or VIP. So if we wanted to simul-stream to Twitter this program that we already streamed to Facebook and YouTube, it costs money. So we'd love to have some grassroots monthly supporters. If you have found yourself learning from the content that we're putting on here, please consider partnering with us, even at just $20 a month or $50 a month. We'd love to get your grassroots support. Very thankful. You help cover the costs to put on this program, this production, between the time I put in and the rest of the staff that help us to cut and clip and produce videos. It's a small little team, and it's a great opportunity to be doing the Lord's work here with this organization for this ministry. So please consider your generous support to join us on the monthly basis, but also and especially this one time with this challenge match. Okay, so let us jump into it. Today's episode is 253, A Problem for Bart Ehrman. It's funny because I talked about Ehrman's top three contradictions, I say alleged contradictions, 2 weeks ago, and last week I was the subject of an interview by a fellow named Dan Ehrman, and no relation that Dan knows of, same last name, spelled the same way. Surely they're related somehow if you go back far enough in the genealogies, you would think, but those records probably don't exist. But now we're back to Bart Ehrman. So we had Bart Ehrman, Dan Ehrman, and now back to Bart Ehrman. Just funny the way that kind of played out. I was on vacation last week, so we played this pre-recorded interview, which was the Church Around the World podcast, Church Connect with Tyndale Publishers. And so if you wanted to get a little bit more about me as a person, you could check out last week's episode. Okay, so what is the problem that I was thinking of for Bart Ehrman? And again, this is sort of an open letter. I hope Bart watches this. Maybe he'll get it posted at his site for consideration. Well, like I said, 2 weeks ago, he was on the Myth Vision podcast, and his third favorite New Testament contradiction was about the staff or no staff example. And I'll play that for you in a moment because I want you to listen carefully to what he describes. But I took the time to give my own take on this difference between Mark and Matthew's gospel. There's a different verb, and I think the way that the verb could be understood is differently. Basically, there's a difference between don't take anything beyond your person. So that might include the staff you're taking. Don't take anything beyond your person, and also don't acquire anything. So I think that the way those two different verbs are operating for their respective authors is that there is not in actuality a contradiction, and that they could be understood differently. So again, I'll just quickly review because I don't want this to be the precise focus, but Mark 6, he charged them to take nothing for their journey except a staff, no bread, no bag, no money in the belts, but to wear sandals and not to put on two tunics. Matthew 10, 9-10, acquire no gold or silver or copper for your belts, no bag for your journey, or two tunics or sandals or a staff. But notice here, you already have this difference. In Matthew, he says don't acquire sandals, but even in Mark, you get the sense that sandals are okay to wear. So you already have, it's not just the staff, it's also the sandals. There's this difference about sandals being referred to. And I think the way to understand this difference, because it's clearly a difference, is that Jesus is saying, don't, in Mark's gospel, don't take anything else beyond what is on you. So there's this sense of urgency to go. In Matthew, I think what is being taught here, same event of course, is simply that what Matthew has relayed is Jesus' instruction not to go beyond yourself to get more things. Don't pack for the journey, go. Hey, you got to get to the airport, go. Don't take time to go get those things, just go. So I think that's what is being conveyed here. And so there's not in actuality a contradiction. You might say it's an alleged contradiction. You might, my friend Mike even, I think he may call them a surface contradiction, surface level. But when you dig in, it's not really an issue. Okay, so that's my take on this. Now, I don't want to get into the text itself. This episode is a thought experiment. Again, an open letter to Bart for his consideration. I want you now to listen to how he describes this event. So the event he was referring to was the Gospel Differences Conference. This was a panel discussion that he referred to in 2019. This was my chance. I first met him. We had a chance to chat over coffee one-on-one, and I appreciated his time in doing so. And it was great to just sit with him and learn from him. And yeah, it was really nice. Okay, so I want you to listen to how he recounts this event. Let's see here.
And so I'll give you the third instance I'll give you is one that I just
I'm not hearing the audio, so let me see if I can get that figured out.
A year and a half ago, right before
let's see here. If not, I can pull up the YouTube video. Oh,
in February 2020.
No. Audio issues. All right, let's go over to YouTube here. I've got it pulled up as a backup.
The third instance I'll give you is one that I just
the reason why there's no audio is because I'm not plugged in. One of those rare times I'll make a tech hiccup here. My apologies. Let's see this. Oh, okay. We'll get back to the slideshow here. See if this works now.
And so I'll give you the third instance
I'll give you
is one that I just recently I thought was really, really quite good. A year and a half ago, right before COVID hit, in February 2020, I was in Chicago at a Christian apologists conference. So as you know, Christian apologists are defenders of the faith. They're conservative evangelicals or fundamentalists.
That totally undid it. I wanted to pause that there because when he said they're conservative evangelicals, they're fundamentalists, I don't know that all of us would take on that fundamentalist label. Maybe he means that they are conservative or fundamentalist, because one could be a moderate conservative but reject fundamentalism. So that's an important difference. And of course, now that I've done that, I've screwed up the video playing. Let's see if this fixes it. No, but we'll try this one.
We
All right, we will
are Myth Vision. Welcome back to Myth Vision Podcast. Ladies and gentlemen,
PowerPoint is
the first thing I want you to
doing me dirty here. We're just going to go straight to YouTube.
Quite good. A year and a half ago, right before COVID hit, in February 2020, I was in Chicago at a Christian apologists conference. So as you know, Christian apologists are defenders of the faith. They're conservative evangelicals or fundamentalists who think that, that they can defend everything in the faith, that it's all logical, makes sense, and they can argue for it. This conference was on whether the Bible has contradictions in it or not, whether the Gospels have contradictions.
Yeah, Gospels specifically.
They had 3 speakers there who were all very conservative evangelical apologists. And they had me because they wanted to hear another side of the story. And, they wanted to see what they were up against. And so I went. I wasn't sure what was going to happen. This may not be good, but it was great. I had a great time. They were really nice. They were pleasant. We had jokes. We laughed. And there were a group of students there from Moody Bible Institute, where I had gone out of high school. So I was a graduate when I was a fundamentalist. And so I said, oh my God, let's have lunch together. They said, yeah, great. So we had lunch and it was great. We told stories. It was a great time. But so we're having this thing, and I lay out the argument why there are contradictions, and these other guys are saying, yeah, no, they aren't contradictions. And, Michael Licona was one of the presenters there, who's one of the leading apologists today. He's a serious guy, and he has a PhD in New Testament studies, and so he's written books defending the Christian faith, including why you have these seem to have discrepancies in the Gospels. His view is that you do have these differences in the Gospels, but it's because the Gospel writers are following standard protocol.
I'm going to skip ahead a little here because I want to get to the way he recollects the examples that were given.
For how you are, for example, a certain way we wrote biography. So, we give our talks, and Mike does his thing, I do my thing. And afterwards, the moderator gets up, who's also a conservative evangelical.
That's me.
He says, okay, so the four of you, I've got a question. I want you all to answer this.
Okay, pay attention. This is important. Pay attention to the way Ehrman recollects the event. And then we're going to play the video recording for you, and we're going to compare.
In Mark's gospel, Jesus sends out the disciples on his mission during his ministry to go out and heal the sick and cast out demons. And he says to them, don't take a backpack. Don't take extra sandals. Don't take any money. Don't take a staff. Just go. And so there you go. In Matthew's gospel, same episode, Jesus sends them out, go heal the sick, raise the dead, or cast out demons, and don't take a backpack, don't take extra sandals, don't take any extra money, and take a staff. Just the opposite of what Mark says. Mm-hmm. So the moderator says, okay, which did Jesus say? And I said, well, he probably said neither, because I don't think it's historical. I said, but I said, Mark.
Neither. He doesn't think it's historical that Jesus sent out his disciples.
Mark's the earlier one. So when Mark says, don't take a staff, Matt says he did take a staff. It's a contradiction. And he asked the other two. The other two kind of reconcile. They hemmed and hawed.
Okay, so we don't have to go any further than this. Here's the thought experiment. The first thing you might notice about this, the first thing is that Bart innocently mixes up what Mark and Matthew said. So Mark's version of the story is that Jesus allows a staff to be taken. It's Matthew's gospel where the staff is prohibited. Again, the way I understand this difference is don't go beyond yourself to acquire a staff in Matthew. And Mark, what's being presented there is take what's on your person and go. All right, let's get back to the PowerPoint. Actually, before we do that, we're going to, so again, the first thing innocently is Ehrman mixes up, but that's not so bad. There's something slightly worse, we'll say, and I want you to listen closely here. We have seemingly conflicting. Look at that, there's a younger me from about 6 years ago now. Passages. And Mike's got more gray hairs too. It's a part of aging, I suppose. Mark 6:8 says, these were his instructions. Take nothing for the journey except a staff. No bread, no bag, no money in your belts. Luke 9:3. Did you catch that? Luke. Loads. Luke 9. Says to not Matthew. Take nothing, not even a staff. Okay? It's the equivalent parallel account, reading horizontally. So, the example I used was the difference between Mark and Luke, not Mark and Matthew. Okay, so let's compare. Let me jump back to my presenter view here for me so I can see my notes. And we're going to scroll ahead because I have some comparison for you here. Okay, so the way Bart recollects this event to Derek at Myth Vision, Bart describes the dispute as being over Mark 6:8 and Matthew 10:10. He doesn't give the chapter and verse, but Mark's account, Matthew's account. That's the way Bart remembers the event. According to the video recording that we just watched, in the video recording, the dispute was actually over Mark 6:8 and Luke chapter 9. We have a discrepancy. Now, this reminds me, sometimes I've watched a lot of Bart Ehrman's debates and videos, and he will commonly get up on stage and he'll say, well, how many angels were at the tomb? It depends which gospel you read. That's a common, it depends which gospel you read. Well, what was the example actually given at the Defenders Conference in 2019? Well, it depends which account you listen to. It depends which account you listen to, right? So what happens here is there's this casting of doubt, not just on this set of detail, but over the entirety of the pericope, of the narrative, of the example given. It's like one minute detail is in doubt, therefore the rest is in doubt. I don't think that's a jump we should be making. And that's the quandary I'm going to pose to Bart with this case study, with this example. Because Bart has innocently conveyed to Derek at MythVision an incorrect detail. So obviously it wasn't his intent to mislead, he just happened to have gotten it wrong. So Bart's got two options here. He could admit his mistake, which he should do anyway. He'll admit his mistake, but what it does, if you take option one, it calls into the question the entirety of his recollection, that Bart is not trustworthy for giving any of the details about that 2019 panel. That's one option. And sometimes that's the way it's presented. Like, you get one small little detail wrong, therefore throw it all out because not trustworthy as an eyewitness. Even Bart Ehrman himself in his various textbook on New Testament history talks about how bad eyewitness testimony can be. So maybe we just got to throw it all out. Here's option two, which is the one I would take if I were him, and I think in actuality he does take option two here. Ehrman admits he made a mistake and yet realizes that his account, we're not talking about the Gospels right now, his account is not entirely unreliable. Now, there's a double negative in here, so we can use in logic what's called double negation. We could rephrase this. Ehrman admits a mistake, yet realizes that his account is entirely reliable. So you can, or you might say generally reliable. So what you have here is a case where Bart makes an innocent mistake about using Matthew when the difference was between Mark and Luke, right? The difference being Matthew or Luke in Bart's account and in reality. But it doesn't call into question Bart's account. It just calls into question that one point. Because Bart still faithfully, reliably conveyed the events as they transpired. He talked about, well, let's compare. So here, one difference, there's actually two differences, but I left out the one where he kind of mixed up what Mark says and Matthew says. So the difference is the passage in question, Matthew versus Luke. But then we have similarities in Bart's account to Derek at MythVision. There were 4 scholars, 3 conservative evangelicals and him, and then there was a moderator, right? So the people there, that all makes sense. The event was in Chicago. Hey, good job, great. The moderator asked a question about the staff, no staff issue. Yep. And Bart even said some other things about the event, about how there were Moody Bible students. I actually think you could even see them sitting in the video recording in the front table. So Bart said a number of other things that would corroborate the story he's telling. But he just happened to misremember that one detail. That one detail. So, what does this mean? What does this thought experiment mean for Bart Ehrman and the way he conveys his story? Well, I've got some thoughts on what this means and how it pertains to how he and we should understand the Gospels. But I want to share my conclusions on this thought experiment after we take a break from our sponsors. So stick with us. When we come back, I'm going to be talking about the implications of Bart's hiccup, his hiccup in his memory, and what that means for how we should understand reliability. So stick with us through this short break from our sponsors.
You're listening to Veracity Hill with Dr. Kurt Jarris.
In a world full of roller coasters, one ride has a dark secret. Gabby Goes to Ludicrum, the first adventure of Doorway Crew, a new series for young travelers.
Evangelical Christians are talking about hell. What if we believe what we believe because we've always believed it? What if the gospel is really a matter of life and death? We want you to open your mind, open your Bible, and rethink hell. At rethinkinghell.com, evangelicals look at what the Bible says about hell, putting conventional and controversial views to the test.
You're listening to Veracity Hill with Dr. Kurt Jarris.
Thanks for sticking with us through that short break from our sponsors. Hey, this is Doorway Crew, which is the first, it's the name of the series of an after-school club where the students have to observe and report what they see on different planets. And Adventure 1, Gabby Goes to Ludicrum, is about a planet full of roller coasters. It's a theme park world. It's a great fictional narrative geared towards young readers, but old readers as well have enjoyed the book. If you want to learn more about the book, go to defendersmedia.com, click on the Doorway Crew tab, and you can order your physical copy today. You can also purchase the ebook version on Amazon. So you can go to amazon.com, search for Doorway Crew, and up pops Gabby Goes to Ludicrum. Adventure 001, Adventure 002 is in progress. It's slow progress, admittedly. I want to thank my friend and ministry partner, Dante, for his continued everlasting patience with me as I juggle multiple projects. But a lot of fun doing this little series. And part of that came out of going to events and having parents and grandparents ask, hey, do you have any resources for kids? And I didn't. And so I thought, hey, I should do something so that there are resources for children. And I didn't just want teaching things that kids would probably be bored over. I mean, how many times do kids say, oh, I'm bored? So I wanted something engaging and thoughtful. So a little novel series is sort of what I came up with. And there we go. We've got Doorway Crew now. Okay, well, on today's episode, we are talking about a problem for Bart Ehrman. And in the first part of the program, I presented the problem. What is it exactly that is the issue for Bart Ehrman? Well, the issue that I am attending to today are what I call the pop-level arguments that Bart is using in public discourse to cast doubt on the reliability of the Bible. Now, he is free to use various methodologies to critique the gospel. He's fully aware of the historical method and the various criteria used to determine historical reliability. But more so, what we hear from him are these pop-level issues about contradictions, rather than looking at the historical method in his arguments. And I would be fascinated to see more debates over that from him, rather than these differences in the accounts. And here's why. So, before we left, I told you that we've got this dilemma, these options, that he describes the dispute from that 2019 event as being over Mark versus Matthew. In actuality, it was over Mark versus Luke. So he misremembered this one detail. Should that mean we throw the whole thing out? Remember, in the Myth Vision interview, he said he did not think that Jesus' commissioning of the 12 here, this small little local commissioning, was historical. And it seems like, given the context, it's because it was over this one issue over staff or no staff. After all, there's nothing about miracles here. There's nothing that would have us question our philosophical assumptions about the nature of reality. In this pericope, there's just this little issue over how do we understand these different verbs that the authors are using. Ultimately, it's about the verbs. It's not about staff or no staff, because the verbs are modifying these objects. So how do they relate to the verb? And there are different verbs. In the Greek, it's clear there are different verbs between Mark and Matthew and Mark and Luke. So what is being conveyed here? That's the issue. Okay, so this is a quandary because you get this one detail wrong, but surely Bart's recollection of the event to Derek shouldn't be thrown out entirely. Bart is still reliable in most of the details that he conveys. And what I'm proposing is that we should also think that way with the Gospels. Even if you want to say that there are errors in the Gospels, you might still think that they are, generally speaking, historically reliable, and that we'd use some other method for determining reliability. So what the point I'm making here is that these little small details shouldn't be casting doubt on the entirety of the narratives. So Bart's got two options here regarding his own account. Now, he's got to say he's made a mistake in how he recollected this, but he was still generally correct in the story that he told to Derek. It's a truth story. It's a truthful story, even if it's not 100% accurate. As my friend Mike would say, Bart gives the gist. Now, I think we could say more than that. It's more than just the mere gist. Bart gave accurate, precise details of who he saw, the people he had lunch with, the Moody students, for example. That actually happened. I saw it. I can corroborate it. We might even have other photographs of it for further corroboration. And scholars, that would be what's called independent attestation. That's one of the criterion for determining historical reliability. Okay, so we had the difference there. We've got the similarities. All right, so Bart Ehrman's mistake here is an innocent one. Does it call into question the reliability of the account? Of his account, not the Gospels, of Bart's account? No, I don't think it does. We should not conclude that because Bart got one detail wrong, the whole thing is thrown out. But how often is it that people do this with the Gospels? They come to believe that there is an error, and they throw it all out. They might think that there's 2 or 3 small errors. I'm not talking major, small, staff or no staff. That's a small little error in the grand scope of the whole case, the whole cumulative case. What this demonstrates is a house of cards faith for people who have an erroneous belief about what reliability, historical reliability is. They've got this wooden reading, and their faith is really not one built on bedrock, not even one built on dirt. It's like on sand. Their faith is built on sand, and they're building a house of cards on sand. And one little issue comes, a little piece of sand comes and knocks the whole thing over. That is an immature faith. It has not flourished in the intellectual understanding of the Christian worldview. And that's sad. I have pity on people like that because I wish people would have read issues more. I wish they would have done more investigation before they gave up the whole thing. I've talked to people, I've interviewed people where I think this is the case, where I'll give one example. I won't say name, but a certain person born and raised in a young earth creationist home. And so he came to believe that young earth creationism was the only option available to him, and that is exactly what the Bible taught. Instead of recognizing, even looking at the church fathers, how many of them held to an old earth view of what Genesis teaches, that he didn't know that was available. And because of that, he came to reject the Bible altogether. And so it just sort of breaks my heart knowing that these people haven't come across these different views. And maybe that's why I do these multi-view conferences, because I want people to become aware of the different available options for them. And I'm not saying all these multiple views are equal, so on and so forth, but just I wish people knew that these are available for people. I don't want there to be obstacles to faith in Christ. So, okay. Bart's mistake is an innocent one, and his account should not be called, the entirety of his account should not be called into question. Now, the same principle applies to the gospel accounts. A proportionally small number of allegedly erroneous details is insufficient to cast doubt on general reliability. That's my claim. I had to think about how to word this exactly the way I wanted it worded. A proportionately small number of allegedly erroneous details is insufficient to cast doubt on general reliability. As I mentioned, we could look at some of Bart's writings. We could look to some other things that he said about historical methodology and the criteria that historians use to determine historical reliability. Let's have that discussion. This is a critique against these pop-level arguments about, well, it depends which gospel you read. It depends, and you've got all these differences, and you've got the top 3 contradictions in the gospels, so on and so forth. These proportionately small number of allegedly erroneous details is insufficient to cast doubt on general reliability. That's the way I would word it. And so my call here, my request, is to shift the discussion, to move away from these little small details. And Bart knows that the Gospels are Greco-Roman bioi. I assume he takes the view here that other New Testament scholars do. I've read some of his stuff. The way he's communicated was scholars generally think X. I assume he also thinks X is the case. As a New Testament scholar and historian, Bart knows this about the Gospels. He knows that there is a far more complex formula that historians use to determine historical reliability. He teaches it in his classes. He teaches it in his textbook, excerpts of which I've looked through, I've read over. And so these pop-level arguments are presented against historical reliability. The popular arguments presented against reliability are, in actuality, not against historical reliability, but they are against a wooden or fundamentalist reading of the Gospels. So that's where Bart's pop-level arguments that we have seen and that we just heard on the Myth Vision interview are of value. They are of value for helping people realize the extent to which this surface-level wooden understanding of the Gospels has problems. Some might say fails, but it certainly has problems. Now, the view of Lacona and Keener and myself, and even Bowman maybe to some extent, that the Gospels are biographies, it doesn't have those same challenges, because it doesn't matter if there's one angel at the tomb or 2 angels, or even the staff or no staff. It doesn't become a problem when we, for example, do a little word study and look at the verbs and how they're different. That one there's more harmonizing there, but we could think of other examples, like example 2 that Bart gave on Jairus' daughter. The view that the Gospels are biography is able to do far and away better than the harmonizing approach on this one. On this example of the raising of Jairus' dead daughter, there is this discrepancy between the Gospels, and you have sort of time compression that occurs. There is a simplifying that occurs with editorial license. That editorial license, I think, does way better than the harmonizing approach to understanding the discrepancy. So I'd like to see Bart shift the discussion more to away from this wooden reading of the Gospels. So that's what he's attacking. He's attacking his previous belief, really. And yes, there are people that believe that, but let's help the conversation continue to move on. Even he observed at that 2019 conference, he blogged about it a day or 2 later, that the arguments for Christian apologetics have become what he called, and I think I'm quoting, I remember the quote, a far more intellectually sustainable form of discourse. And that was very kind of him to word it that way. these arguments, the understanding of the Gospels in the arena of apologetics has advanced. And we should keep that conversation going. So let's deal with those arguments that Lacona presents and Keener presents, rather than getting back to these pop-level discrepancies over, well, which gospel are you reading? We are all aware of, many of us are all aware of these differences now, and how should we understand those? Let's keep the conversation going forward. So I hope that take here, this problem for Ehrman, makes sense to you. Again, let me recap for our episode today. The problem here for Bart is that he misrecollected a detail, technically two, but I just want to focus on one detail of an event. He misremembered which gospel I had brought up. He said it was Matthew, and actually it was Luke. There's certainly no offense. It's no big deal. It's an innocent mistake. The point I want to make is simply that erroneous misrecollection doesn't cast doubt, even for me, on how reliable Bart conveyed the story to Derek at MythVision. Likewise, we should approach the Gospels in the same way, that even if we think that there might be an error, maybe that's a conclusion you come to, hey, that there was a mistake there. Nevertheless, they're generally reliable in the way that they convey the events, especially about this commissioning. Why does Bart think that that's not a historical event? Is it really because of this staff, no staff issue over that one minor detail? Does that mean we should discount Bart's communication to Derek about that 2019 conference? No. Bart was still faithfully reliable. So I hope he'll think about that. I hope you'll think about it as well, about what we think about reliability, what the word reliable means, that something is trustworthy. And even when people or someone makes one mistake, you can still think that they are generally reliable, even if imperfect. So that's my model of gospel reliability and that concept. And I'd like you to think about that as well, that reliability doesn't necessitate 100% perfection. Now, I happen to think that the Gospels are inerrant, so I've probably just lost all of the Bart Ehrman followers watching this. I do think the text is inerrant, but I don't think that is a doctrine that necessarily follows. I think it contingently follows. It follows after further investigation of these differences, so on and so forth, whereas some people erroneously think that they are necessarily connected, and I don't think that's the case. All right, well, hey, that's the problem for Bart Ehrman. I wanted to share with you that thought experiment. I would love to know what you think. Am I bringing up a good point here? Am I missing the mark? Have I misunderstood Bart altogether? I would love to know your thoughts. You can reach out to me through veracityhill.com/contact. You could also write a YouTube comment, and I want to thank you for your engagement. If you are not yet a subscriber to Veracity Hill on YouTube, please do so. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, other platforms. I think we got a TikTok channel that I don't even touch, which is great because Gabe does all that work. So thank you to Gabe. Okay, so that does it for the show today. I'm grateful for the continued support of our patrons and sponsors. I want to thank them for their continued support of our program. Patrons are people that just chip in a few bucks each month. You can go to veracityhill.com/donate and start your partnership with Veracity Hill today. I'm also grateful for the sponsors that we have with Defenders Media, Apologetics315.com, and Rethinking Hell. I want to thank our technical team. We've got technical and content in everyone. The team at Defenders is really a great crew of people. I love working with them. Gabe, Dante, Kyle, Mark, Beth, Sophia. We've got a couple other freelancers as well. I'm grateful for the work that they do for Veracity Hill, helping to bring 7 videos every week to you so you can grow in your faith, you can grow in your understanding of the Christian worldview if you're not a Christian. And my hope with that is simply to help the public social conversation over Christianity. That I hope it's far more, as Bart said, an intellectually sustainable form of discourse, as I stumble over that word sustainable. A far more intellectually sustainable form of discourse. And that maybe the faith that you are taught isn't as, House of Cardsy as maybe presented. And in doing so, maybe you'll give it a second chance. So that's what I'm hoping for those that identify as non-Christians, that you'll give it a second chance, and maybe we can approach these texts a little differently than maybe what you were raised believing. Okay, I want to, last and not least, thank you for listening in or for watching here as we're striving for truth on this potential problem for Dr. Bart Ehrman.
This has been Veracity Hill, a viewer and listener supported program. For more resources, including past shows, visit veracityhill.com.